Have you discovered SharePoint list column formatting, also known as JSON formatting? If you're new to this or you're trying to understand how to customize the look of a list or library in SharePoint, this video is for you. This is the first in a series of videos that's covering list column formatting and list view formatting, and probably a few other things as well. It'll take a little CSS and HTML knowledge, so if you're comfortable with that, join me as we dive into a simple example and show what's possible and build out something neat. So I've got a site here that represents just some demos that I'm doing, and on this site I've got a projects list. So this will just be a simple projects list in this case. It's going to have basic information, the title of the project, the percentage of progress that it's currently in, and the due date. Now, there's really nothing special about this right now. There's no formatting at all applied to this. So I'd like to put in a little bit of color, make some things stand out so I know if things are overdue, if they're complete, things like that. And this is without really configuring any new views to do any filtering based on, completion or overdue or anything like that. That can always be done, of course. But in this case, I just want to do the column formatting to make this pop a little bit more. So we're going to start with something easy first, the progress field. Right now it's just a number field. There's no zeros after the decimal. It's just a straight integer. And we're going to turn this into a progress bar. We won't even need to use formulas with this. So to do this, we're going to click on the down arrow for the header, go down to column settings, and format this column. And depending on the field type, you'll have different options here. For numbers, we've got data bars and conditional formatting. So conditional formatting will let you change the format of this field based on its own values, maybe the values of other fields. That's certainly possible as well. But for this one, we want to use data bars. So it will give us a progress bar type of look to this. So we'll click on data bars, and then I'm going to click on edit template. So we have two options here. We have minimum, maximum value. We're going to change maximum value to 100 because this is the percentage. And we don't have to worry in this case about positive or negative values because everything's always going to be positive. From here, we're going to click save. We can go in and change the color of this. So if we wanted this more of a dark blue, we can just change that of the positive value field. We'll click save and then close. So now we've got a nice progress bar. You could see that it will eventually fill up the entire bar once something goes to 100%. And we even see the bar in the details view, which is kind of nice. So the progress bar is done, but let me show you one other way you could get to that same thing. This is the older way that we used to have to apply JSON formatting before it was introduced on that modern view. So before we had to go to the field and we had to scroll down, and this is what we had to type in. Well, it isn't quite this messy, but this is how we would have to apply that before. And generally what it really meant was we were going to find an example on the internet, copy and paste it in here, and then tweak it, because no one wants to write this stuff from scratch. So the other field is due date. I don't think I really want to do anything with this field. What I really would like is a better status indicator that would show if a project is in progress, completed, maybe if it's overdue. We could do that based on a combination of looking at the progress field and the due date field. So right now I'm gonna create a text field. I could do a choice, but honestly, all I really want to do is have some place so that the formatting can control the text inside that cell as well as the colors, the style that's applied there. So I'm going to create a text field. I'll call this status. It'll be a single line of text, and then I'm just going to click save. So now the status field is in here. There's no values on here, and that's fine. We're not actually even going to store a value for this column. All we're going to do is use this to apply custom column formatting. So we're going to hit the down arrow and go to column settings and format this column. So we've got two things we really need to do. First, we need to, in case you didn't know, you can resize this to whatever width you would like so that you can make sure you see what it is that you're modifying. So as we are updating this, we're going to see real-time results right over here. So the first thing we really need to do is apply some colors to this, depending on the value of our progress bar and the value of the due date. So for that, we're going to go to conditional formatting. So we have 3 rules we really need to watch for. One is if the progress is under 100% and it's not past the due date. The other is if the progress is under 100% and it is past the due date. And the third is going to be if the progress is 100%. So first we're going to apply our in progress status color. So that would really be if progress is less than 100%. So the project isn't finished yet. It's still in progress. And we are not past the due date. So if due date is after, and we can just pick right here just to select today. So it'll always look at the current day to make that comparison. So it's very simple to build out these conditions. You can do them with custom JSON as well. Sometimes it can simplify things, but why make things harder if you don't need to? In this case, we don't need to. We could use the easy stuff. So that's what we're going to do. So if the progress is under 100% and we are not past the due date, then we're just going to show this, and blue works for me. So we'll save this. This is our first rule. This will color the rows blue if they're still in progress and not overdue. Now you see over here, we've got 3 rows already in blue because they're not completed and we aren't past the due date. This top row is not completed, but we are past the due date. It is the 18th as I record this video. So this date's already passed. This is going to be overdue, but we haven't added that rule yet. Next, let's add the rule for the completed items. So for that, we'll add another rule. And if the progress is equal to 100%, then it doesn't matter what the due date is. It should always be green. So we will hit save, and there is our completed rule. And you already see it's highlighted the one completed project we've got as green. So what's left is this top row, which is going to be overdue. So we'll go back, we'll add one more rule, and this is going to be if progress is less than 100 and due date is before today. So that would mean that it is past the due date. The project is not completed yet. It is now overdue. So we could change this. Probably a red color would be better. And then we'll click save. And it looks like the colors are coming through nicely. Everything's being applied correctly to each of the conditions that I've got set up in this list. So that'll really do it for the colors on here. What we want now is some text to go inside these cells so that we could also have the words complete, in progress, overdue, and that's also going to be done by formatting. Now, we could have used a calculated column for this, but I wanted to just show how everything could be done through formatting. So let's see how this is done. So there's a button down here that you'll usually see called advanced mode. And this is where we're going to be going now, because what we need to do is we need to look at the raw JSON, because there's no real easy way through this system to change the value of this column or the cell depending on other factors. It makes it very easy to apply custom styles and things like that. But for changing the text, we're going to be going into advanced mode. And there's a lot of JSON in here because of all the rules that we put in. Right here at the bottom is what we're really looking for though, the text content. So this is going to set the value of that field as far as the text that's going to be displayed. So right now it's set to the value of the status field. Well, we're not going to put any values in the status field. We want that to be automatic. So what we really need is we need a formula, and these are about as easy as Excel formulas. They might be a little bit easier because you usually don't use that many different types of functions to construct your formulas. So first we're going to start with something simple. We're going to end up with a more complex formula, but I never start just typing out the entire thing. I want to start small, I want to build out from there, and I want to check my work as I go. We're going to get rid of everything inside this value, and we're going to change it to if progress is equal to 100%, I want the value to say complete, otherwise incomplete. Oh, I forgot to put an equal sign here. There we go. So this is not taking overdue into account. That's going to be a second step. But for right now, that looks like it's working fine. All the incomplete projects show incomplete. We got our one completed one showing correct. What we need to do now is modify this one more time to take into account the overdue status. So this is going to use a function to get the current date. What we're going to do with this is we're going to add another if statement to go around this original one. Because if it's overdue, it doesn't matter what the status is. We don't have to look at anything else except for that. So I'll give myself some room here. We'll say if due date, and by the way, these are the internal names of these columns. I made them without spaces so I would have nice clean field names, and then later added back the space. If due date is less than now, what the less than is really talking about is it an older date than right now? So yesterday will be a smaller date value than today. Tomorrow is going to be a greater date value than today. So if you haven't dealt with logical expressions greater than, less than, with dates, that's how SharePoint interprets all that. So if the due date is less than now, and we're going to use two ampersand symbols to represent a Boolean and progress is not set to complete. So this will make sure we don't mark a completed project as overdue as soon as we pass the due date. So if the due date is less than now and the progress is not 100%, then we're going to mark this overdue. Otherwise, then we'll go into our other if statement. So if it's not overdue, then it's either complete or incomplete. And then we'll close the parentheses there. And let's try it out. Oh, I've got the wrong syntax here for this now. What this should be is an @ sign. Now let's try that. Okay, there we go. That looks much better. So let me close this up and let's see what we've got now. So the first project, 75% done, but it's overdue and the status shows that. The second one is 100% done. The due date hasn't come and it's showing complete. Well, what if this is, let's move this due date back some and let's make sure that all the logic is working correctly. Yep, it is. So the project is now overdue, but since it's complete, the status is complete. That logic is working good, and the others are just simply not complete, but they're not overdue yet. So all these statuses are showing correctly now, and I'm happy with how this has turned out. So now that all that work is done, some other things I wanted to point out are that a lot of things can be more dynamic in this JSON object, in this JSON formatting object. So you can do things like pretty much any of these values you can change and convert to a formula. So if you wanted to change the padding, the same type of if statement that we used here at the bottom can be used up here to change the padding to whatever you'd like. You can change the divs to spans. You can do all sorts of things in here to tweak how this looks. And here you see all of this complex Boolean logic to do all the comparisons. It's really just to apply classes to these HTML elements. Now, again, you do have to know a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, at least to know what you're looking at here. But you can tweak things a lot once you get into this JSON side of the formatting. And as we saw in this formula, you can use other fields to make decisions on. So you could reference any number of different fields on the current list item that's being displayed. So for instance, this top one. You could reference any of these fields to make a decision on what to do with the styling, or in this case, the text content, what's displayed inside that cell. There's another type of formatting that you can do as well on lists and libraries, and that's list view formatting. For that, I'm going to make a separate video, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We're exploring custom list views in this video and creating something similar to a Trello board, but we're not stopping there. We're going to customize it even further with JSON formatting to make this thing even better. There's also hidden functionality that you may not even know about, so don't miss a second. Let's get into it. I've got a project task list. It's just got a number of different tasks to complete a SharePoint migration. So I've got, a few fields here: title, description, status, pretty standard stuff as far as lists go. But what I can do is I can turn this into something a lot more useful. So I could go up to the view menu and I can create a new view, and I will call this task board. And I can pick to show this as a board. What this will do is turn this into a Kanban board. If you're familiar with those types of things, like Trello is a really good example of that. So when I do that, it's going to organize this into columns, almost like swim lanes, I guess you could say. But in this case, it'll be based on a status. So I need to organize this by something. I have a status field here. So I'm going to organize this by status. And once this is created, you'll see everything gets dropped into its appropriate column, depending on the status of that thing. Things that are already done, identifying the site owners. It's already over here off to the side. Things that I'm currently executing are listed here. Everything's, put into the right place, including items that don't even have a status yet. Nothing's been assigned. And once this item actually starts to get planned, what I can do is just drag this over to the planning column, and it will actually update that. Now, what's interesting is that as you move things from one column to the next, this particular view will automatically update the status for that thing. So you see the support phase begin now has a status of planning because I dropped it into that column. I can also add a new bucket here called, I'll just use a status 1. And what that will do is if we go look into list settings, it would have actually updated my status column to now include status 1. So that's pretty neat. I haven't found all the additional things that this will do just yet, but so far it's very cool using this thing. So let's go back to the task board. What I want to do now is customize the card, and that's going to let us change what's already on this card in a really easy way. So right now I don't want, and we can drag this over here so we can see what we're doing. I don't want the description on here. I'm going to turn that off. Assigns to, this needs to be moved down here. And then the status, I think, is a little redundant because we already have column headings to show the status. So I'm going to turn that off. And I think that is going to be good. I'm going to turn off column names, I think, but I'm going to do it a different way. What I'm going to do at this point, now that the card's designed, I can click on advanced mode and we could see the JSON format here. What we want to do is, I don't like the title being on this line above. I kind of want it more in line. So I'm going to scroll down. There's definitely a lot of stuff in here, but what I can do is see, I'm already seeing things related to the assigns to field, which appears below it. But if I scroll up a little, I'll see this line right here. This is what adds the actual text value right there. And the way this reads is just if the title value is equal to a blank string, it just puts a hyphen. Otherwise, it puts the value of title. Well, let's do more of an inline title heading. So we can just add in title. I think that will do it. Well, just to make sure I have good syntax and everything, I'll hit preview. That looks good. But now we've got a duplicate title thing up here. Now, if I go back to the previous screen and just click off the title heading, what it'll do is update this JSON and replace this customization that I just added. I don't want to do that because I don't want to have to retype that. But if we scroll up, you will see above this text element, which is actually our title now, there's another element. And this is the heading. And you could see that because the text content for that paragraph node is set to title.displayName. So that's the display name of the title field. So if we just delete this and hit preview, now that title heading is gone. So I like that. It looks a bit cleaner. You could argue that removing title entirely might be a bit cleaner because it would be kind of assumed that the first item on this card would be the title. Yeah, I think we'll just leave it off entirely. We can keep the assigned to here just because I could see situations where maybe you might have multiple person or lookup fields on there, and maybe you'd want to kind of differentiate what role that person serves on that task. I think just to add a little bit of separation between the title and that assigned to, I'm going to find the div element that is kind of wrapping around this whole field, both the label and the value. That's going to be this field right here, because if that's where our title ended, this is going to be where our whole title element, the div for that, where that ended. So this is the start of the next div. I want to add a little bit of padding to this. So I'm going to add a new element to the style attribute. So this is basically just adding in an inline CSS style. We'll do a margin on the top. And we'll just set this to maybe 40 pixels. And let's preview this. Make sure that looks good. I think it's a bit much. We'll go down to 30. That looks better. So now we'll save this and close this and just give it a refresh, see how everything looks. I like that a lot better. It doesn't take up nearly as much space as it originally did. Gives us more room vertically to see more tasks on each column. And I think that'll do it for this demo. On the next demo, I'm going to cover the gallery. There's some more stuff that we can do with JSON formatting. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to be jumping into the gallery layout for lists in this video. Not only that, I'm going to show off a really cool feature of JSON formatting that you probably never knew existed. And it has nothing to do with formatting the list. So really neat thing. It's going to be really cool to show off. To round out this video, we're going to be finally jumping into the actual JSON formatting structure itself to show you that it really isn't hard after all, so there's no reason to put off learning this thing. Let's get into it and let me show you what I mean. So continuing on the project task list that we were working on in the last video, what we can do is create a new view and we'll just call this card layout test. And we will do a gallery. So we'll add this and you'll see that every list item is now listed in its own card. The card should look a little bit familiar because we did have these on our board demo in the last video. The same options are still available if we go to Format Current View because we can see the card designer. You could turn fields on and off. You could also just move them higher or lower. So saving this, one thing we can also do is just because this looks a little different than the typical list layout or the list view, which would be more like, all items. We can go to this new card layout and we can still go back to edit current view. You still have the option of doing sorting, doing filters, and what I want to try out is the group by. So we can still do grouping. Let's group on the status field and see how that updates our view. So a much slicker interface, a little different than the board layout, but it's still grouping based on status. It's just more of a vertical type presentation instead of a strict horizontal one. Now, we don't have the same functionality that the board had where we can just drag things to a different status and it would update the list item. So that's gone. So this is definitely a simplified version of that board layout. We do still have the option to go back and go into the card designer and into advanced mode. Stretch that out, we'll still see the same types of things we saw before because it's still the same JSON that is used even in the board layout, at least the JSON that you could start with. One thing that you probably didn't know was possible with JSON formatting is that you not only can change the way the data is presented, you could even affect the bars across the top of the screen. If I select an item, you see an edit button. Well, if we go into advanced mode, there's a lot of different options that you could implement on the JSON. One of those will control the command bar that is shown across the top of the list and what buttons can appear, what icons they'll have. All of those things can be controlled. So maybe you want to disable the new button. Maybe you want to disable the grid mode buttons. A lot of those things are all possible. So if I want to disable the new button, what we can do is insert into anywhere on this top level, like right before the formatter starts, add a new line, and we'll paste in command bar props. And this is telling SharePoint what items need to be updated from the default. So once we have good syntax, you'll see the preview button is enabled. And if we preview, the new button's gone now. It's completely removed. So while I still have access to add new items here, it'll be a little bit harder. So this could have uses where you just really want to try and discourage adding new items, and maybe there's another process. Maybe there's a Power App that you would prefer people to use to create something new or some other method. Maybe in addition to hiding the new button, we want to disable the share. So we can add this new section in here to trigger on the share action, blank out the icon, and now the icon's gone. If we were to change this a bit further, and we'll just hide it altogether. Now the share is gone. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with this to try and customize the interface a little bit. Maybe it needs to be much simpler for the users that are going to be using this. There's a lot of opportunities here to really tweak what happens without ever writing any actual code. No SharePoint framework components are needed. None of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things you could do like this. And this stuff works really well for a low effort, high result list or library. You can customize things. You could really do a lot. If we wanted to, we could even hide the edit altogether as well. We'll just copy the new. We'll change this to edit. And now edit's gone. Very, very slick. There's a link in the description that you ought to look at that shows you all the different available commands that you could implement the command bar customization with. So I encourage you to check that out. And if you're getting value from this video, please click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. While we're in here, I wanted to also go over what's really in this JSON formatting thing that a lot of people just don't really know much about. So I wanted to cover this. What we really have is, we have some more generic, higher level functionality type things at the very top of these JSON formatting files. The meat is really going to be here where the formatter is. This is going to control what's actually put out on the screen for each list item. And they've got a few common elements. One, what type of HTML element is going to be put on the screen? Is it going to be a div, a span? Is it going to be a paragraph tag? Is it going to be a button? Pretty much anything is possible here as far as HTML elements go. So you'll have just the element name itself right here. Then you'll have an attributes section. And this is just what's going to go inside that HTML element. What are you going to have classes applied for CSS? Are you going to have anything else like data attributes just to store miscellaneous information that you'll use in other ways, maybe with custom components or something. So any attributes can be added here. You could use classes, you could use style tags. Again, all this is just going to get put into the HTML elements opening tag. Then there's the children section. And this is just what's going to go inside that element, what's going to go between the opening and closing tags, which is really the content inside that div, if you're familiar with HTML styling. And this is really when the pattern starts to repeat itself. You're going to have the square brackets. The square brackets are going to indicate that this is an array. So it's just a series of elements. And each element is going to be basically what we've just covered. We're going to start back over. What elements can be created inside here first? Any attributes. This one is going to handle the default clicks. So this is a div that's going to allow you to select and unselect a list item. After that element, it's going to be another div. And this looks like it's going to have a whole lot of things inside it. So this is going to basically wrap around all the rest of the content. Setting CSS classes, and then inside that div, we're nesting further and further, which is typically what you'll see when you dig into the HTML on websites. There's a lot of nested components here. But here's where you're getting to the actual fields themselves. We have one div here, and here is where we start to see real things. We'll see the title display name here. And then right below that, you'll see, similar to what we saw last time we were editing this, we see the text content. So in other words, the value of the title of this particular list item. So this line right here is why we see identify site owners right there, because that's the value of that field in this list item that's being rendered. So you'll see a lot of other things like this. It just depends on how many total fields you're actually showing on each card. If you're only showing 1 or 2 cards, you'll have a much shorter list than this. But it really isn't complex at all once you kind of understand what you're looking at, what these things are. And having an understanding of HTML will definitely help you a lot in the SharePoint world. You don't have to be an HTML author or anything like that, but at least kind of understanding some of these basic tags like divs, spans, maybe these paragraph tags will definitely help you a lot. And the more you spend in the JSON formatting editor, the more efficient you'll be with the edits you can make and the customizations that you can provide out to people. There's a link in the description that covers more about what's really allowed inside the JSON formatting editor, so you can get a little more familiar with that and maybe looking for opportunities in your own world to start to implement this and provide those custom solutions to users. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this.